Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima and I'm here checking out Gunhouse. If that name sounds familiar to you, well, you've been watching this channel for a while. Gunhouse was a game that originally came out on PlayStation Mobile, which is actually a name I haven't heard in a while, Recreação in Pace, and it's out now. It's pretty much out now as a native Vita game. And there's not that much to see out in the menu, so let's just go have a quick look around before we do. There's your sound levels. You can go to help, which will tell you how the game works, but frankly, it's better to just jump right in. You got your credits and you got your about screen, but there's seriously not that much else you need to see out here. You've got your stats, which will keep track of how you're doing in hardcore mode and all your other things that you can do. It's nothing particularly over the top. Unfortunately, there's no online leaderboard for the hardcore mode either, which would be a nice thing to have, but oh well. We have a store, and you can go to the store to both buy weapons and upgrade your weapons and your statistics. So for example, I've got 6 hearts and 7 healing, which means I'm around a little bit, well, there's no like actual number stats or anything, but I'm more likely to heal, and I've also got 3 armor, which will save me some trouble. You can actually... The only thing you can't take back on this screen is purchasing new weapons. Other than that, you can upgrade and downgrade all your weapons and your health and stuff at will, more or less. So, if I wanted to refund 2 levels of my flame gun to put it into something else, I could. And I would, but I actually like my flame gun, my vegetable gun, and my igloo gun, penguin gun, whatever. So yeah, that only applies to the play Gunhouse mode. The hardcore mode, you're stuck with the basic 3 weapons and no upgrades. And the 3 basic weapons are the dragon gun, the penguin gun, and the skull gun. And also, you can't equip 2 weapons of the same color in any one loadout. You've got 3 weapons you can have at any one time, and I can't have both the penguin gun and the fork gun. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So, let's go hop into Gunhouse. I'm currently at day 8. There are apparently 100 days in this game, and every day consists of 3 levels. So, 300 something levels of this game seems a little bit over the top, if I gotta say so myself, but we'll have a go anyway. So, this is Gunhouse. The basic idea is that it's a puzzle game with a little bit of an action element going on in it. The idea is that you need to make cubes and rectangles and what have you out of all of these, what would you call them? Blocks in this well here. And making 2x2, 3x3, 2x3, basically anything that's a square or bigger and it's got equal amounts of sides. What the fuck does that mean? Basically anything that's looks like a square or a rectangle. Do that and you get blocks out of them, and you put these blocks into these weapons in order to get them to load up with weaponry you use to attack the onslaught of dudes. Whenever your attacks slow down, you get the ability to do the same thing again, more or less. There are a couple of other things that are notable, like if you drag it to the left, you get a gun, and if you drag it to the right, you get a spell. Well, it's basically a spell. They call it a special, but it's more or less a spell. And these spells and guns are different depending on the color you get, so obviously the green is going to be a bit different than the blue, yada 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 yada. You do also have that little chain meter up in the top there, just above the guns, and if you put that in successfully, if you put in the color they're looking for successfully, I should say, it will give your guns a 2 times power multiplier. Also, you can put consecutive colors of you can put in the same color consecutively, and it'll give you a more powerful version of that weapon. So you can spend a ton of time building up just one weapon if you want. But in this game, that's not a very good idea, because as you can see, I've already gotten myself into a fair bit of trouble here because I'm almost out of health and they are wiping the floor with me. So I need to try and make this as powerful as I can, as quickly as I can. The game does kind of bounce back and forth between the whole figure out what weapons you want to use while still trying to get as many multipliers and stuff as possible via the usage of the little panel up there. It's nothing that's particularly over the top, and you'll have a general grasp of the game within the first 5 minutes of playing it, but once you do get going, it's pretty intense, because as you can see, this is just the first part of the level. They come in massive droves, and it means that you need a massive amount of firepower to take them out, more or less. And thankfully, I am getting a fair amount of firepower right here, just none of it is extremely powerful, mainly because of the fact that this game is a little bit annoying with how what's the word I'm looking for, how lacking it can be in the colors you need to actually get the 2x multipliers. It's kind of frustrating sometimes, honestly, but it's not particularly unfair because, again, you're working with blocks that you see drop in from the top there, so it's not like it's entirely the game's fault. You do get a fair amount of each color to work with. It can just be a little bit difficult to get it all into the right amount of squares. The game's main strategy for helping you with this is telling you that tetrominos are easier to get into the 2x2 or higher blocks you need in order to successfully make a weapon or a spell. But other than that, it doesn't really give you that much assistance, whether it be by giving you a more hands-on tutorial, which it kind of does, actually. It does give you a full tutorial, but it can still be a bit difficult to work with getting all the... It can still be a bit difficult getting to work with all the different little mechanics in the game and trying to figure out how to make all those different combinations. So anyway, fire vegetable special 3 times in 1 turn, load 9 specials with blocks of 3x2, and have 16,000 in the bank. Those are your objectives. There's 50 of them, I think. It might be 100. I can't be 100% sure. I don't remember exactly. But they are there, and they will give you extra money when they're done. So if you want to make as much money as possible, you do as many of those objectives as you feel like. Or you can, or whatever. You can see how enemies drop money just by, well, paying attention to them, really. And they will, and the little bot down there will go and vacuum it up at the end of every wave. Or, not even wave, really, at the end of every firing session. So, you earn money no matter what, basically. You earn the money even if you die, which is very useful for this game, because this game can get quite difficult, if you couldn't tell. Again, all the enemies just swarm, like massive, massive swarms, and they can be very hard to deal with at times. You do need to upgrade your weapons as much as possible, but thankfully the game makes this particularly easy by letting you upgrade and downgrade at will. So the only thing you really need to worry about is how much it costs to unlock certain weapons. Because being able to upgrade and downgrade at any time that you see fit means that you can try out a weapon, and if you don't like it, you can just downgrade back to the weapon's original level, and then you can put that money somewhere else, which is a very good thing for this game, I must say, because the weapons are very different from one another. They can be very different in how they can be used offensively and defensively. Like, there's a bunch of different weapons that have physical attacks, and there's also ones that have defensive abilities. Like, there's one, for example, that gives you a gigantic defensive wall that just keeps enemies away for a while. But then you've got one that there's like a giant carrot that falls from the sky. Then you've got one that's a giant, then you've got one that there's a giant just like hailstorm that'll come down and slow everything down. All the weapons are significantly different, and the fact that you have to take along 3 of them of differing colors means that there's a fair amount of strategy to be had in just figuring out exactly what weapons will serve you best, and that is a very good thing. Gives the game a bit of longevity. Gives the game a bit of longevity. And not to mention the 300 levels gives it a bit of longevity. I mean, seriously. These levels can take a bit, if you couldn't tell. They are very... Well, they aren't very long, but they feel a lot longer than they maybe should be. They're not intensely long. Like, they're not 15 minutes of just nothing but holding off the same set of enemies over and over again, but they can feel pretty long, especially if you're... They can feel pretty long, especially if you've been playing for a fair amount of time, because enemies can take a lot of damage in this game, especially later on, and I'm only on level 8. I can't even imagine what level 100 is going to be like, but it's probably going to be very damage heavy, I'll tell you that much. Whether it be they be doing damage to me or I'll be doing damage to them. I haven't actually game overed more than once, which is alright, but then again, that's probably because there is an absolute ton of money to be had, so you don't have to worry too much about... You don't have to worry too much about not having the money you need to upgrade. And I also boosted my healing right at the very start when I had the opportunity, so I was more than capable of taking care of myself. But yeah, the game's enjoyable. It's got a lot of action going on. Choosing what weapons you want to take the time to make for either the attack you're under or the attack you're going to be running into next. And just how crazy some of the art is. Like, look at some of this art. It's ridiculous. And I don't say that in a bad way. I say that in a pretty enjoyable way, actually. All these enemies are really silly. They have started repeating enemies, though. However, I haven't come across a non-unique boss yet, but I can't imagine they've got 100 unique bosses for this game. That would be quite unbelievable. But yeah, it's pretty hectic, especially when you start getting into the later levels and you need to be as fast as humanly possible because you only get 18 seconds, which is a surprisingly short amount of time once you... It's a surprisingly short amount of time once you get acquainted to the whole puzzle thing, because they give you 36 seconds at first, which is a ridiculous amount of time, but then they give you 18 and suddenly everything needs to be going a hell of a lot faster. It's, as I said, it's very hectic and quite enjoyable, in fact. Wouldn't be half as fun if they didn't make it so that you didn't always feel like you were on the skin of your teeth. Let's fire these guys off immediately. The music's alright. It's probably the least enjoyable part of this game for me, but I say least enjoyable in the sense that I just don't really feel anything for it. I more or less started listening to my own music about half an hour in, and it's not because I hated the music here, but it's just because I wasn't particularly interested in it. The store theme, in particular, is really quite the annoying little earworm, I'll put it that way. Defeat 9 enemies with a lightning gun, that's actually something I will do. So I will go and fiddle around with my weapons a bit, just so I can show off a different set, shall I? We'll make that level 4. We'll do the skull gun and I'll equip it to the dragon gun slot, the flame gun slot, I should say. Refund all of that. Spend the upgrade money on here. And do I want to replace the penguin gun with the fork gun? Yeah, you can see how it's different. Why not? Upgrade this to level 6. Sure, why not? I should probably give myself more armor. Nope, don't have the money for it. Alright. Level up the lightning gun and level up the skull gun. Alright, there we go. Oh, I forgot to equip the fork gun. There we go. Equip the slot 1 and we're done. So, there are a couple of, like, little minor things that are annoying. Like, you can't stop in the middle of a game of hardcore mode. If you even go to the store, which it actually prompts you to do for some reason, despite the fact you can't use it at the end of a wave, it'll actually count as the end of the hardcore mode game, and I'm not entirely sure why. And there are button controls you can use to play this game, which is the D-pad and the X button, but they don't really work, not in the grand scheme. You are way, way, way faster on the D-pad. Not on the D-pad, sorry, the touchscreen. You are way faster on the touchscreen than you are with the D-pad. It was nice that they attempted to add it, sure, but it's still not particularly fantastic, I gotta say. I mean, that's pretty much it, really. I mean, I have one more. I have one more major gripe with this game, I gotta say, and that's the price they chose to charge for it. I'm not entirely sure what convinced them to charge 15 bucks for Gunhouse, but after only having paid a couple of bucks for it, Possibly a little bit more on PlayStation Mobile. Honestly, my memory isn't that great, so I don't really remember exactly how much I paid for it. But I know for a fact I didn't pay 15 bucks. And while the addition of the hardcore mode is a nice little bonus, it's not really enough to justify such a big price hike in my point of view. There's the defensive wall, by the way, which is kind of why I never take along the fork gun, because I much prefer being able to rain electric death on my enemies. Well, doesn't that make me sound like a serial killer? But yeah. It's the price, honestly. Like, if they charged, like, I would probably charge $7.99 for this version. I think that's fair. It's a reasonable upgrade, and it does add more to Gunhouse that, you know, I like to see, while still maintaining the same base gameplay, which isn't a huge... It isn't a huge upgrade over the top, but, I mean, it's a Vita native version. I'm not going to complain too much about it. But 15 bucks really does seem like too much. As I said, $7.99 probably would have been the point for me. That would have been the sweet spot. I keep forgetting about that damn lightning gun. Gonna make sure you go in there. And then I just overrode it with a different kind of gun. Whoops! I'm not very good at Gunhouse, I will admit, but there's nothing wrong with the gameplay. Not really. It works pretty much exactly how you would expect, and it does a fine job of it. Really? I mean, it's a pretty good puzzle game. I don't know what else you would want. It's got a reasonable... I really should have put in the skull first. Why didn't I put in the skull first? Pay attention to the game, me. But yeah. I'm usually not that big of a fan of puzzle games, but this game adding a bit of action into the bit of puzzling is absolutely fine by me. It's a well done port as well. As far as I can tell, it runs absolutely fine. Nothing in the way of major performance drops or anything like that. Which is nice. And I mean, if you're willing to spend the 15 bucks to get the Vita native version of a game you liked on PlayStation Mobile, then I'd say go for it. Although the question is, I wonder if it's kind of part of their plan. You see, these guys are also the same people who made Oh Dear, if you remember that game. That game was certainly something. And it's a shame it never got finished. It's still in beta on the PC platform, which is, like, not the best thing in the world, but... I mean, it's okay. However, I have seen multiple times on their Twitter that what they want to do is they want to somehow raise some money and finish it. And while I'm not particularly sure how they plan on doing that, if I had to take a guess, I'd say charging 15 bucks for a game they previously charged around 5 for would be a relatively smart bet. At least that would be my reasoning. So who knows, maybe they'll take the money they get from well, I don't want to say overcharging for Gunhouse, but at the same time, it's kind of overcharging for Gunhouse. If they take the money from that and use it to finish Oh Dear, well, I would have, like, I have no objection to that whatsoever. Gonna sneeze. Yeah, I would have no objection to that, basically, whatsoever. But even in a vacuum where we don't have to think about another game being made on the dollars made from this one, Gunhouse is still pretty good. It's still got its own enjoyable gameplay, a neat little mix of action stuff and puzzle stuff, and I find myself enjoying it quite a bit, just like I did back when it came out on PlayStation Mobile. So, if you want it on Vita natively, so you don't have to worry about formatting your Vita for this game specifically, which is a bit of an odd thing. But if you want it for that, well, here you go. You've got a native version, go get it. As far as I'm aware, it's not out in Europe yet, but I can't imagine why it won't be at some point in the very near future. So yeah, every night there's a boss fight, and the boss fight is basically just the same thing as the regular mode. It's the same thing as the regular gameplay, it's just you've got one big dude instead of a lot of little dudes. Another thing that kind of annoys me about this, although this is my own personal problem more than anything else, is that I keep managing to knock my right joystick while I'm playing this, which is surprisingly annoying because I don't want to go doing any damage to my right analog stick, but the movements I need to make to be relatively quick in this game are surprisingly likely to hit my right analog stick. So I don't really want to go doing that. But the game is quote not quote. The game is more or less making me do it anyway, just so I can keep up. So, you know, if you're a little bit clumsy with your fat fingers, you might want to be careful about picking this one up. Oh, goodbye, little dudes. I'm not going to be able to save you, and I'm going to take the health... I'm going to take a health loss in order to compensate for the fact that I lost you, which is a little unfortunate, but not much I can do about it. I don't have a very good set of weapons, I gotta say. I found a pretty good combination going on with the weapons I had in the beginning of this video, but oh well. Launch everything! Okay. Well, I got some of my health back, which is nice. I don't think I stand a chance of losing at this one, as long as I'm not a complete dullard, but again, this is me we're talking about. I have lost some of the easiest things to win before, on camera. Fire everything, damn it. It'd be nice if there was a health bar. I mean, with the regular enemies, you don't really need it, just because of how little damage they can usually take before they cork it. You can die now, damn it, Jesus. I ran out of things to say 5 minutes ago. Couldn't bloody tell. Gotta try and get this gun. No, that's not going to be a gun. That's going to be a defensive wall. Because I don't really have a choice in the matter. Fire these. Oh, the goofy grin. That's a bit silly. Oh, no. Hey, that's actually kind of nice. The sail's half destroyed. I'm guessing that means I'm getting close to winning. I didn't notice that before. I was so busy focusing on my side of the screen, I didn't even see that was there. That's a nice little touch. Hurry up and die, it's 38 degrees outside. Need to get the fans turned back on before I boil to death. Man, it loves giving me the bloody forks to use as part of my chain, doesn't it? Exactly when I don't actually have any lying around. Now I've got to do the poison skulls. Finally! That was actually pretty close. Huh? Oh, okay. Apparently I have to do one more just because there's still some dudes trying to take my dudes. And that kind of sucks. So let's make sure they don't succeed, shall we? Fire everything. I couldn't even see him, but yeah. That's pretty much it. That's all there is to it. It's just rinse and repeat after that, and we've been at this for 25 minutes. So let's not stick around any longer, shall we? I'd show you hardcore mode, but it's basically the same thing, just starting from level 1, which would be a little bit more boring than watching the level 8 or 9 that you just did. So I think it's about time we end this video. This has been Blue Maxima. I did quite enjoy Gunhouse. It might be a little bit overpriced, but it's still a pretty good game, and if you want to spend the money, go right ahead. I'll see you next time.